Amid some riveting tennis at the ongoing US Open at Flushing Meadows, this woman, Naomi Osaka, remains front and center of the conversation, which surrounds her well-documented mental health issues. The two-time champion at the New York Grand Slam has been knocked out of the 2021 tournament, losing in the third round to the 18-year-old Leila Fernandez of Canada. And following that match on Friday, which Osaka surrendered after serving for it at 6-5 in the second set, she told reporters she's uncertain about her future. Here's that gripping exchange at the post-match press. Tearful Naomi Osaka there. We are joined by sports psychologist Alexandria Olton to help us to understand some of the issues being faced by Osaka. Alex, thanks for joining us for the first time on the SportsMax Zone. Not often that we link with South America. You're all the way in Chile. Osaka says, quote, "When I win, I don't feel happy," end of quote. And she doesn't think that's normal. Is that normal, Alexandria?
To not feel
happy when you win.
Positive emotion when you win is certainly not quote unquote normal. Of course, everyone has sort of different expectations, different emotional experiences and so on, but it's very clear that Osaka is dealing with something very deep-rooted and underlying, her performances, and as a result, it's expressing itself in her sort of very tumultuous year that she's had thus far. This is not her first open expression of mental ill health and mental struggle and mental strain. So it's certainly not surprising that it's expressing itself yet again if it was left untreated or not necessarily addressed or taken care of. Osaka is someone who rose to fame and success at a very, very young age. She was 16 years old when she turned pro. And certainly it's important that the support system around her coaches and family, friends, and even, the help of a sports psychologist creates that sort of network of support to help keep her grounded. And as you rise to fame, how do you manage the expectations of self when you become so successful so young? What more could you possibly achieve? And how do you feel fulfilled when you get those achievements? What more can you reach for? And certainly, yeah, so her expression of not feeling happy is not the norm, I should say.
Yeah. Alex, one serious tennis enthusiast told me earlier on today that when this whole issue started with her, and in Paris as well, when she withdrew, he didn't feel that much sympathy for her. He felt that, it was a bit of a show and so on. But he conceded that at this point, he's now beginning to think that she really, really does have a problem. How do you assess globally how the tennis world is accepting Naomi Osaka's problems?
I think, we don't have to just look specifically at tennis. We can look at the sporting community at large. The notion of mental wellness and mental well-being of athletes has only sort of just been given a sort of a room at the table, as it were. I'm not surprised that the tennis enthusiast that you speak of sort of said, oh, she's sort of putting on a show sort of thing. And it's kind of a sad reality that we have to await the complete crash and burn of great athletes. You can also look towards Simone Biles in the Olympics as well, and her open struggle and acknowledgement with mental ill health. And a lot of people said that such a great athlete is just choking under the pressure and not being able to unable to manage it, sort of thing. But we have to understand the immense pressures is not just about performance for these athletes, especially these young athletes. It's also dealing with being in the public eye all the time, win, lose, or otherwise. You are scrutinized, you are commentated on, you are given opinions of, and it's really important to acknowledge that the sporting world at large is performance driven, of course, because we have things like the Olympics that, you strive for medals. You have the US Open, Australian Open, French Open, that you want to achieve titles and Grand Slam titles and Wimbledon and so on. But they don't necessarily take into account what is required, or the sacrifice, the mental and physical sacrifice that these athletes endure to be able to attain those great performances. And I think now more than ever, there is need for sports psychologists on every team, working with every athlete. I think it should be a complete norm to have a sports psychologist as part of the coaching staff, the technical team, because not only do we work with the athletes and develop their mental well-being, but we also act as support for the coaching staff, for the technical team. You work as a pillar, as part of the entire unit that holds this athlete up and props them up, especially in the difficult times such as these.
Yeah, and Alex, it brings me to my question that, Naomi's situation is definitely getting worse by the day, and it's starting to look as if she doesn't get the proper assistance, we would lose another top athlete. Do you see it that way?
I would, from the snippets in the media, I would agree, yes, that absolutely she doesn't seem to be getting the support she needs, or she's, trying to push through it, or of course, we can't speak with much certainty, because of course it's only what we get from the media and the interviews and whatnot. But it does seem to be progressing in a sort of downward spiral, and it to me it appears that she needs what she's described, her indefinite leave from tennis. She's reached that point of burnout. She's reached that point of physical and mental fatigue, where she needs that rest and recovery and support at this stage.
Right, and then she says, I'm going to take a break for a while. But you being a psychologist looking on, is a break the only thing that she would need right now? Will that be able to fix her issues? Because to me, that seems like just putting a Band-Aid on the wound. You take a break and then you come back and you're back in the same situation again.
Oh, no, she definitely need to be working with some sort of mental health professional. That's a certainty. But the rest away from the sport, tied with that support from a mental health practitioner, would certainly be of benefit. Whether she returns to the sport or not, I guess, is determined based on what they discover through that therapeutic intervention. But as of right now, the break alone, you're right, it's putting a Band-Aid on a very open wound, so it's not necessarily going to fix the problem.
Yeah, Alex, you alluded earlier on to the fact that she had turned pro from she was 16 years old. When you look at the history of sports stars who have struggled with these kinds of issues, there's a common thread about a lot of them achieving a lot early, becoming superstars before they, are fully mature adults. Do you see this as a trend where, young superstars are more at risk?
Certainly, because if they're not guided in the right way, and that, even with the proper guidance, we cannot guarantee that someone will not experience mental ill health at some point or another. Realistically, we all experience it at some stage in our life, whether diagnosed or undiagnosed, as a global population. If you look to sort of Venus and Serena Williams, if we're sticking to tennis, or Tiger Woods, if we go to golf, these young athletes that rose to fame quite quickly at young ages. All of them would have experienced mental illness at some point throughout their sporting career as well. Very obvious with Tiger Woods. With Serena Williams, we see it express itself up to recently, when she had sort of that breakdown during one of her recent matches. I think it was post-Olympics. And it can certainly be very trialing on an individual who is not yet certain of their own identity, still developing who they are as a human being, their values, their core beliefs. If not provided with the right guidance, with that support, the rise to fame can be a very isolating one, as well as a very shallow one. You might premise your identity on your success. All you are is a tennis superstar, and when that's taken away from you, or when you lose, who am I? Who do I become? Where do I go from here? What do I have beyond the sport that I play? We can see a lot of it also happening in other sports when athletes retire. There is a severe loss of identity with certain athletes who are coming out of the sport that they once played. So It can certainly be a trend that we can link a young age and high success and mental illness.
Alexandria Olton from Chile, sports psychologist. Thank you very much for talking to us from Trinidad and Tobago initially. I'm being reminded. I thought I heard a bit of a Caribbean accent there at some point, but it's certainly a pleasure having your expert contribution to the SportsMax Zone. It's been an issue that we've been discussing for several months now, and we appreciate your contribution. We'll talk again, I'm sure.
Thanks.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Okay. break time. Back with the wrap of the SportsMax Zone after this.